Okay, guys, we're going to continue with what we've been talking about a little bit and hopefully making this make a little bit more sense. We're going to hit, again, supporting your determination for a response with specific textual evidence. And to do that, I think today will make it all come home. Some of you did really well on the pre-test. Others had a little bit more difficulty.
Hello, this is how I will do my tap since it's hot on my mind and I don't know how else to do it. But, so, that short clip that we've watched so far, right off the bat, I'm noticing that I am starting to lag. She explained a concept that I wasn't quite sure how to sign. Maybe due to lack of prep, maybe due to how do I do this? I don't know, but I'm starting to get a little bit behind here. And also, I know I'm starting to get a little bit behind because it's showing on my face, which is something that I'm trying to work on. Another thing that I'm trying to work on is finger spelling, but flagging it, which I think I do well in this video. However, my finger spelling is very, very fast. I can't read that. I can't read my own finger spelling. I couldn't voice for myself. So, and I did get feedback from you, Jen, that I should be slowing down my finger spelling and spelling more intentionally. But I think for this video, I was just trying to keep up. So as the video progresses, we'll see what else I need to work on.
I got a couple pre-tests because I was trying to hone in on what we really were trying to figure out, what I was trying to figure out, and how I can better support you. So today we're going to determine tone of nonfiction text by evaluating the fact.
That wasn't very long. All right, so one thing that I'm also picking up on is during this interpretation, my eye gaze is everywhere. I don't know where I'm looking. It can be very distracting for me to watch myself when I'm signing, but my eye gaze is down here. And then when I'm thinking or listening, I'm like this. So that kind of goes with the previous clip where I am not, should I be using neutral language? The interpreter's facial expressions were inappropriate to the message that was trying to be conveyed. Those facial expressions were not included in the original source language and therefore were additions by the interpreter, which skewed the message or impacted the clarity of the message.
Good word choice. We've got 5 different articles of Malcolm X's assassination that we did some background on the past couple days. And then whatever you decide is your determination of tone.
3 things. 1, the interpreter's lag time is starting to impact their interpretation. The lag time is far behind, where they're not keeping up with the timing and the pacing of the source language, impacting the message and omitting information. I also noticed eye gaze continues to be an issue. And the 3rd thing I noticed is that 2 sign production errors. Emotion was just kind of like that. And article was, or text. Okay. The sign production errors did impact the clarity of the message, as well as the grammar and structure, and the lack of transitions. But let me not hate on the interpreter.
Like if it's playful or serious, you need to pull out your specific textual evidence from that piece and verify that, right? That you can say, this is where in the article I say it's playful or that it's serious. This is where I think the author is giving us that type of tone. So let's review real quick. What is tone? Somebody? Antonio?
In the attitude the writer has toward the subject.
Good. And here you're going to see a lot of attitude. You'll notice on the board, we're going to go over one article together, okay? Break it down so you understand what you're going to do with the other four.
And my notes. So in that clip, I noticed that the interpreter, once again, talking about being intentional with finger spelling, which thank you so much for that feedback, by the way. I this. Clearly not in this interpretation, but it's here. The interpreter misspelled two words, Malcolm and highlighter. I could not get highlighter out. And the interpreter putting such an emphasis on highlighter because the interpreter was doubting that their signing was clear, like, oh, we're highlighting the important parts. The interpreter was unsure that that was the correct sign choice. Attempted a finger spelling little, like, if you didn't get that, do you get this? But in doing so at the prioritizing, understanding, little comprehension check, at the sacrifice of, now we're lagging. The interpreter was very far behind, and the interpretation was starting to become unduly free because the interpreter appears to just be relying on their surface level knowledge of what the point of class is today. So I didn't include much of anything that the teacher was talking about because of the lag time, and because we really prioritize, like, you're supposed to highlight the important words. And then I didn't even finish the sentence. The facial expressions, once again, it's probably for the best. Those tones are not present in the source language, especially when I was role shifting, because the gaze is over here. When I role shifted, we're getting closer. But my facial expression showed a lot of uncertainty because I was uncertain of what they had said. Antonio gave a beautiful answer to the question of what is tone, what does it mean? And Antonio said something along the lines of the attitude that the writer has. And the interpreter, first of all, was not this with that interaction. So already we've sacrificed, already this is impacting the deaf student, the hypothetical deaf student, because they were not present for that. It was a disconnect. That happened and it's already gone, and I'm interpreting it consecutively at this point. And then the interpreter signed emotion, impact, text, meaning. Emotion impacts the meaning of the text. That's what I was thinking. I don't know if that comes across in ASL. Watching it muted, I was like, there was a sign production error. The interpreter fixed it. All right.
At your groups. And part of that is, can you see the author, right? So definitely their perception of it, you will kind of see that person. There are no names on these articles, which I think make it more interesting. We don't know if it's male or female. We don't know who this person was. We'd have to go back and research who actually wrote the article. So here, we're going to read and analyze one account of Malcolm X's assassination together as an example. If you need highlighters, I've got a bunch of markers here that you can grab one if you don't, and just pass those around. I want you, as we go through this together, to highlight the words that grab you. Think about a synonym you could substitute for that word. how does that affect the tone of the sentence or the piece? So we're gonna break it up, we're gonna do the first sentence actually together, see what you mark, and we're gonna discuss it, and then we're gonna do the rest of that article, all right?
So, that clip was a little lengthier, but that doesn't mean there was less to talk about. Unclear transitions, once again, I will say I ended on a transition. A lot of what I think are transitions are really just like pausing to like catch up on my processing. So, but they're not like real like transitions. That's okay. Now, this clip really showed a lot of conceptual inaccuracies, conceptual errors. For instance, try to see the author. That was a sentence that was included on the lesson plan. I remember reading that and being like, what does that mean? Figure it out. How do I sign that? Practice, skimmed it over, whatever. And then actually like putting it into action, we fell a little flat. So the word that trips me up in that sentence is the word see. Try to see the author. And when she was describing this in English, which I was this, I'm talking about highlighters or something again. So when she's talking about seeing the author, she means like get a visualization of who this person might be. She said something about they're not a man, they're not a woman, we don't know. Like there is no author attributed to this article. So it's you all picking up on the tone, picking up on their perspective, picking up on their thoughts and opinions and the word choices that they use that affect the tone of this message to try and get a picture of who this author might be in your head. That was that. How would I sign that? Not 100% sure. But what I did sign was and then I had a sign production error for author because I have a habit of getting a little sloppy when I'm too far behind. It starts to get a little sloppy. And also I would say that it's not conceptually accurate at all because you're not depicting, it's not like, oh, I'm the author. You're trying to get into their headspace. You're trying to like, I don't know. And that's why I was so far behind. There was an addition I noticed where during, I want to say like a brief pause where I'm catching up, my hand makes the hand shape and I do this, and then I do this. I'm signing not have to, which did not match the original intention of the source language because I don't know where that little not came from. I was explaining like the steps for the assignment and the addition of a negation skewed the message and impacted the clarity. Highlighters again, really tripped up about highlighters. I'm so glad that this has been brought to my attention now. I didn't sign marker, I did this. Marker highlight. Do you need like basket, mirror, if you want? I don't know. And then I did notice in this clip, brought some positives. I had one transition that I could very clearly see, okay, that was a transition. We are moving on. And I like the attempts at not depiction, but like constructed action of like reading the article. Oh, that word, like I want to highlight that. There's an attempt being made. I did. Like, she might have said interesting, she didn't say interesting. I did interesting. I wouldn't say that's a concept. I wouldn't say that conceptually matches what she was trying to get at. She's trying to say words that like evoked an emotional response. And so we're getting there. So close yet so far.
With that, again, how does it affect the tone? How does it change it? What is the overall tone of the article? Once we've read the whole thing and you go back and review all of your markings and kind of truly evaluating what is this author, how is it coming across to me, their tone, what would you say that is? Is it serious? Is it playful? Is it very, really doesn't have any emotional tie to it? Overly emotional? What is it? Okay? So let's give you the articles clip. As usual, this goes in your journal. You've got a new entry that's kind of backdated. But you're going to do tone and word choice for the 5 Malcolm X articles. Your page number will correspond to wherever you are now in your notebook for this entry. So they may be different from everybody else in your group, all right? Okay, so if we look, you have the first 4 of these are copied from analyzing different accounts of assassination of Malcolm X and thinking critically. I always do this with my college course. We always do this piece. I like it a whole lot. And that's by John Chafee. And then on the back, the last one is Dan Kurland. It's how the language really works, the fundamentals of critical reading and effective writing, the assassination of Malcolm X.
I'm very happy that the interpreter decided to take a pause and really catch up where they lost, because that was, I'd even say, unduly free. I'd go as far as to say unduly free. I'm not saying anything that the teacher is saying at this point in the interpretation. I have repeated myself a million times, but unclearly, and not including like extra information that would be beneficial for the deaf student. I made a little note about it. The teacher is giving examples in English of how to apply tone and giving in-depth instructions and like saying, oh, read the article, try to determine if maybe it's playful, if it's serious, and giving examples of different words and how to apply tone to them. That is detrimental to the deaf student because the interpreter was dropping all of that at the sacrifice of the deaf student at a very crucial time. All of the hearing students got to hear these examples, and even though it was just so small, so quick, they're kind of taking that in and learning how to apply it in the future. So yeah, that was a very crucial detail to omit, and unfortunately it was omitted.
It's from criticalreading.com, okay? The first one, Life, March 5th, 1965. I'm going to begin reading it just so we can kind of break it down and show you what I'm wanting you to do with each piece. So that first sentence, remember how on Friday we looked at the biography piece of his that was pretty generic. It didn't have a whole lot of emotion charged in it. Think about how the word choice here is different for this author and what they might be trying to get across. So you have life oozing out through a half dozen or more gunshot wounds in his chest. Malcolm X, once the shrillest voice of black supremacy, lay dying on the...
What a nightmare. Sorry. So, the assassination bit was unclear because the interpreter was missing crucial details about what happened during that assassination. The interpreter was effective when they fingerspelled assassination and tied it to a sign. And clarified whose assassination it was by fingerspelling. And those were the only details included. The article is what goes into, and also the date was omitted. And the article is what goes into like how he was assassinated. He was shot multiple times, and the article that they were reading in class today talked about the word choices that article used describing his assassination that show you what the author's intent and perspective is. And they also compared it to last week Friday's article where they read a biography about Malcolm X and comparing the word choices to that, which was also omitted. So the interpreter also keeps defaulting to emotional impact when they don't know what to sign to finish a sentence, which prioritizing finishing sentences, sacrificing what the sentence was, sacrificing what the source language was into the target language. All right. I would say it was unduly free. I would say it was visually boring. And I would say it omitted salient information and is depriving that deaf child to the detriment of that deaf student.
Stage of a Manhattan auditorium. In that sentence alone, what would you have highlighted, circled, marked as kind of words that stick out to you that are kind of charged? Charles?
Oozing.
Oozing. What does that make you see or feel? Oozing. Coming out real slow? Okay, I kind of think of like a wound or something that's kind of almost like pus oozing. I kind of see the pus thing. It's kind of disgusting, but I do. So with the oozing one, what would you replace it with? What kind of synonym? And let's talk about how that would change. Gushing. Okay, so if it's gushing, how does that change the tone?
That changes it fast.
Coming out faster. What would that relate? If it's oozing, it's a slow process, slowly dying, really horrible, right? Gushing, it's still horrible, but it's happening faster, okay? So the word choice there might be just visually he saw it oozing and chose that word instead of slowly coming out, just it was more effective to say it in one word, right? Oozing, and it sounds kind of disgusting and bloody and all that, which they're probably going for. Joshua.
I'll use squirting.
Squirt? You like squirt. So that would be like shit. Like, I think about if it struck an artery or something, that you'd have the nasty squirting. You like horror, don't you? Yeah, Joshua, the squirting. Okay. Antonio?
Like bleeding.
Bleeding, right? So that's a good one. So his life bleeding out through a half dozen. How would that change? Bleeding and oozing.
Oozing.
More dramatic. I like that. More dramatic. So let's say if you view that's what the author is going for in their tone towards the end. In that same sentence, anything else struck your mind? Someone besides Charles, Joshua, Antonio? Rebecca?
That clip had a lot of classroom dialogue and a lot of classroom discourse. And my lag time hugely impacted how well I kept up with that classroom discourse. I did not include names because I was too far behind. I was not catching them. The interpreter prioritized finishing sentences and role shifting. Let's go back. Let's go in order. I'm fingerspelling the synonyms that the students are suggesting. Like oozing. I'm spelling a lot of them wrong. I'm spelling them too fast. I'm not clarifying who's saying what, and also it's not clear what this is in relation to. I don't think there's enough context in the room to kind of realize that, like, oh, we're talking about, like, when the author is describing the blood oozing out of Malcolm X's body onto the stage. That's the emotional impact. That's the whoa. And what words we could use to replace that to change the tone and to change the... And so I really wish I had provided more, like, tagging, sign tagging, like maybe expand or explain that, like, okay, that sentence that we just read, it said something about oozing, like the blood is oozing from him. I also did the wrong classifiers. I'm doing it over here. He was not shot in the arm. I would have known that if I had heard it, but I did not. Forgot where I was. I wish I had tagged it with, like, the blood is oozing, or like the blood is squirting. That was another one. I didn't use the right classifiers. I wish I had, like, tagged more signs to make it clear, like, what we're referring to, what context it's in. Like, maybe, like, word, oozing, gushing, like, this one's like, also one jokester in the class said squirting for a synonym, which applies to the situation. That is what I would label an inappropriate response that was managed by the teacher, and she had to redirect them back to the original focus, but also didn't totally discredit his answer because it did apply. I also didn't hear anybody laugh. I laughed in my interpretation. I did not compartmentalize that. I did not include it into my interpretation, really, and I didn't interpret the interaction at all. I signed some things, and I made some facial expressions, but there were no sentences, there was no explanation, there was no context, there was nothing. No name, there was nothing. I noticed as I'm doing the interaction, as students are giving suggestions for different synonyms, I'm starting to have source language intrusions because I'm still on oozing. They're talking about gushing. Now I've accidentally fingerspelled gushing, but I'm describing oozing. It wasn't going very well. I didn't finish my sentences. I didn't include any wait time. I didn't really clarify when she was asking a question to the class, just like I would point. I got that out, but I did not include when she was addressing the class. I thought my role shifting was pretty clear, and my facial expressions matched the tone, but it just wasn't clear who was talking, but I sure knew when they were talking. I also don't think dramatic increase was conceptually accurate, and I'm not including a lot of teaching strategies or ASL instruction strategies into my interpretation at all.
Yep. Shrillest. So what does shrillest mean? Not sure, but it just stuck with you? Outspoken, high-pitched, right? If it's something is shrill, I think of the harpies, that it is not a pleasant sound. It's very loud, right? And so if the alarms come on, it's a shrill tone, and it's something you don't want to be around, right? So right there, we already have his life oozing out through a half dozen or more gunshot wounds in his chest. Malcolm X, once the shrillest voice of black supremacy, lay dying on the stage of a Manhattan auditorium For me, I already see that possibly this author doesn't like Malcolm so much. That shrill voice, he doesn't really want to hear that voice. But with shrill, if we substitute a synonym, what could we substitute there and how would it change the tone? Rhoda?
Strongest?
Strongest. Ooh, I like that. What's the strongest voice of Black supremacy? Would that fit right now? During that point in time, was Malcolm one of the strongest voices of Black supremacy? He was. He was one of the strongest. So that would fit, and that would totally change the tone. That is a beautiful example. So if you said strongest, what would the tone come across to you? Is it a positive or a negative? Positive. It is more positive. Kind of, I'm embracing what he's saying. He's strong and powerful. Okay? Great. Is this making sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
Holy crap. That was crazy. That was crazy indeed. Not too many notes for the last little chunk. I was using this sign. I wish I'd used this one. Word. Shrillest. I just wasn't on top of what she was saying. So it wasn't, like, I guess conceptually, I got most of that there. I missed the sentence. And that transitions me to my next point, actually. I missed the sentence that she read using the word shrill, which, an important thing to miss. So that was salient information that the interpreter omitted. I missed the sentence and then took a very unduly free control of freestyling the sentence to what I assumed was the best, like, what it was trying to get at, what it might have implied. I did that a lot during this interpretation, which is maybe a little concerning that I'm just making stuff up. The sentence in English was the shrillest voice of Black supremacy. And I was somewhere near that. I did Malcolm. He was, and I wasn't sure what the intent was either, so my facial expressions are not matching. But he was the shrillest voice for Black supporter. That wasn't what it said. But if we look conceptually, it does kind of match. Overall, I'm not an educational interpreter. And I have a lot of room for growth. Facial expressions, besides interpreter reactions interfering with the interpretation, facial expressions were good.